Ellie Harper sat in the kitchen of Seabreeze house, her childhood home, and stared out at the crashing waves. The salt air and the distant sound of seagulls used to bring her comfort, but today the house felt like a prison. She wasn't ready to leave, but the bills were mounting, and the decision had been made. "Mom, I've sold the house," Ellie said, looking up at her mother Margaret, who was seated at the kitchen table sipping tea. Margaret's expression didn't change. She was a woman of few words, and this was not the first time Ellie had made a hard decision for the family. But this one was different. Margaret had always loved this house, the history, the ocean view, the memories of their family's time here. It was where Ellie had grown up, and where Margaret had lived for the past 30 years. "Sold it?" Margaret asked softly, her eyes narrowing. "But why?" "This house means everything to me." Ellie hesitated, trying to explain. "I thought it would be best. We can't afford it anymore, and you're getting older. We need to move on. Find something more manageable." Margaret was silent for a long time. Ellie had already signed the papers, the house was as good as gone, and the new owners were moving in tomorrow. But what Ellie didn't know, and what her mother didn't either, was that the decision to sell Seabreeze house would unearth something far darker than either of them could have imagined. The next day, Ellie received the first message. It was from the real estate agent who had handled the sale. "Ellie, you need to come to the house. The new owners are saying strange things are happening. There's talk of paranormal activity." Ellie laughed, thinking it was a joke. Her mother had always told ghost stories about the old house, tales that Ellie had dismissed as superstition. But when the agent's voice trembled on the phone, her amusement faded. "Strange things? What do you mean?" Ellie asked. "The doors won't stay shut, lights flicker even when the power's off, and the sound of footsteps in the attic at all hours. I didn't want to alarm you, but I think we may have a problem." Ellie's heart skipped. "I'll come by," she said, trying to sound calm, but as she hung up, an unsettling feeling settled in her chest. Chapter 3. Uncovering the Past. Ellie drove back to Seabreeze house that afternoon, the long road feeling eerily empty. As she pulled into the driveway, she noticed that the new owner's car was parked outside, but there was no sign of anyone inside. The door was unlocked, as if they'd been in a hurry to leave. Stepping inside, the air felt heavy, thick, oppressive, almost suffocating. The house seemed different, no longer filled with the warmth of memories. It felt cold and barren. Ellie's footsteps echoed in the silence. She moved through the house, calling out to the owners, but no one answered. Finally, she reached the living room where the new owners had set up their things. The husband, a man named Jack, stood by the window, his back to her. "Jack?" Ellie said, but her voice faltered when she saw the look on his face. His eyes were wide, and there was a faint tremor in his hands. He turned slowly, almost as though in a daze. "You need to leave. It's here. It won't leave us alone." Ellie's chest tightened. "What are you talking about? What's happening?" Jack looked past her, his eyes fixed on something she couldn't see. "We've heard it. Voices, footsteps, and last night my wife saw someone standing in the hallway, but when she looked again, there was nothing." Ellie's stomach churned. She could feel it now, the weight of the house pressing in around her. Something was wrong. "You have to tell me everything," Ellie said. "What exactly is happening?" Jack shuddered. "It's not just the noises. It's the feeling, like we're being watched. Like it's waiting for us." Ellie spent the next few days digging into the history of Seabreeze house, hoping to find something that might explain the haunting. She went through old records in the town's archives, reading about the house's construction and the people who had lived there before. The house had been built in the early 1900s by a wealthy ship captain named Henry Watterson. Legend had it that he and his family were involved in a tragic accident during a storm when the ship he was sailing on had gone down off the coast. Some said his wife and children died in the wreck, others claimed they were murdered. But whatever the truth was, Henry had never recovered from the loss, and he became obsessed with trying to communicate with his family beyond the grave. Rumor had it that Henry had used seances and other occult practices to try and bring his family back. His obsession with the afterlife became his undoing. He died under mysterious circumstances in the house. Some said from a broken heart, others whispered that the house had taken him. Ellie found a newspaper clipping detailing the strange events surrounding his death. According to the article, people in town believed that Henry's spirit, along with the spirits of his family, still haunted the house. The reports from the new owners grew more disturbing. One night, they called Ellie in a panic. Their young daughter had seen a woman in the attic, someone who looked just like the portraits of Henry's wife. The girl had screamed, and the whole family fled the house, not returning for days. Ellie knew that the haunting was real now. But there was one thing she didn't understand. Why hadn't it affected her family? Why hadn't Margaret experienced anything strange in all these years? Ellie returned to the house, determined to confront whatever was there. She entered the attic, the place where the ghostly figures had been seen. The air was thick with dust, and old trunks and boxes littered the space. But then, beneath the floorboards, Ellie noticed something strange, an old, weathered journal. Opening it, Ellie found it belonged to Henry Watterson. The entries were filled with ramblings about the afterlife, communications with spirits, and, most chillingly, his increasing belief that the spirits of his wife and children were trapped in the house. "I will never leave," one entry read. "They are here with me, waiting. They will not rest until I bring them back." As Ellie read, a cold wind blew through the attic, making the hairs on the back of her neck stand up. She looked around, but there was no sign of movement. Yet the air was filled with a sense of dread. "Leave," a whisper seemed to say. "Leave, or join us." Ellie felt a chill run down her spine. The house was alive with the spirits of its past, and Henry's obsession had created a doorway for them to linger. The house wasn't just haunted, it was cursed. Ellie's heart pounded as she understood the truth. The spirits were trapped in a cycle of despair, waiting for someone to release them. But to do so, Ellie would have to confront the ghosts of Henry's family, and risk becoming part of the curse herself. With a deep breath, Ellie gathered the strength to confront the spirits. She found an old ritual in Henry's journal, one that could perhaps free them from their torment. But the price was high. Ellie would have to offer her own soul to the house in exchange for the spirit's release. As Ellie prepared for the ritual, she felt Margaret's presence in the room. Her mother had followed her into the attic without Ellie noticing. "You don't have to do this, Ellie," Margaret said, her voice trembling. "We've lived through enough." "Let it go." But Ellie knew there was no turning back. The spirits of Seabreeze House had already claimed so much. It was time for them to be freed. With a final incantation, the house groaned. The walls seemed to pulse as if alive. The spirits, once trapped in torment, were finally released. As Ellie finished the ritual, the house seemed to exhale a sigh of relief, the oppressive air lifting. The presence of the spirits was gone. Seabreeze House was no longer a prison for the dead. But as Ellie and Margaret left the house for the last time, Ellie couldn't shake the feeling that she had left a part of herself behind, tied forever to the secrets of Seabreeze House.